A hunting trip takes a deadly turn, with two aggressive grizzly bears, some choices that may have altered the outcome, and possibly just a cruel twist of fate. It's a tragic reminder that even with the right equipment, anything can go wrong in the wilderness. In this story, we recount the events surrounding Mark Uptain, a 37-year-old elk hunting guide, and the hunting trip that would tragically be his last. On September 13, 2018, Corey Chubon from Florida met up with his guide for the day, Mark Uptain. Uptain was set to assist Chubon in pursuing his dream of hunting elk. While Florida is home to many diverse species, wild elk are not among them. So, like many other hunters, Chubon had planned a lengthy trip to hunt in a location known for its elk population. After much consideration, he decided on Bridger Teton National Forest in Wyoming, U.S., as the ideal spot for his bow hunting adventure. The Bridger Teton National Forest in western Wyoming covers around 3.4 million acres, making it one of the largest national forests in the U.S. The area is home to a variety of wildlife, including elk, moose, coyotes, cougars, bison, wolves, and grizzly bears. While these creatures can be intimidating, they add to the forest's appeal, making it a popular destination for tourists and locals alike. The Bridger Teton National Forest is highlighted for its four key features: wildlife, winter activities, wilderness, and wild and scenic rivers. These characteristics likely caught the attention of Florida native Corey Chubon in September 2018. He planned to hunt elk with a bow, but knew he needed a trusted guide to navigate the wilderness. This led him to Mark Uptain, a 37-year-old seasoned guide from Jackson, Wyoming. Chubon hired Uptain for his trip, and on Thursday, September 13, 2018, the pair set off into the Bridger Teton National Forest. Riding horses, they spent the day searching for elk. Eventually, they spotted a bull elk, giving Corey the chance to take a shot. Unfortunately, the shot didn't kill the animal, leaving it wounded and on the run. The two men were unaware of where it had gone, but they began searching for it anyway. As darkness started to fall and the two men had still not found the wounded elk, Chubon and Uptain decided to leave and continue their search the next day. On Friday, September 14, 2018, they met up again and immediately resumed the search for the elk that Chubon had shot the day before. With the help of a large blood trail, the search became much easier. Around 1 p.m. that afternoon, they finally found the bull elk. It was dead, and the carcass had not been disturbed by any predators. The two men tied up their horses nearby and set to work. Their plan was to field dress the elk so they could process it for transport on their horses. As the hours passed, the warm temperature made it uncomfortable for Mark Uptain. He decided to remove his shirt and chest holster. This seemingly small decision would have big consequences. The holster contained his 10mm Glock, a crucial piece of safety equipment. By taking it off and leaving it behind, Uptain essentially parted with a vital defense measure. Little did he know he was about to need it more than ever. The two men resumed their work, but suddenly, they heard something that made their blood run cold. It sounded like rocks being banged together, a noise that could only signal trouble. Before they could react, two grizzly bears charging toward them with terrifying speed. One of the bears was an adult female, while the other was a yearling, following closely behind its mother. The situation spiraled out of control as the adult female grizzly pounced, locking onto Uptain. With his guide under attack, Chubon was consumed by terror, but he knew he couldn't let his fear take over. He couldn't allow the bear to maul Uptain right in front of him. The only way to fight back was to retrieve the Glock that Uptain had discarded. Chubon sprinted to where the handgun lay, 5 to 10 yards away, but when he grabbed the semi-automatic pistol, Chubon struggled to get a clean shot. He finally managed to get a brief opening, but that's when he realized the gun wasn't working. The slide wouldn't move. The yearling bear stayed on the sidelines, seemingly uninterested in attacking, which gave Chubon a moment to think. He continued trying to operate the Glock, but he was unfamiliar with how it worked, and nothing was happening. The bear's attention quickly shifted. The sow left Uptain, now focusing entirely on Chubon. The massive beast charged him, and before he knew it, it clamped its powerful jaws around his right boot. The bear managed to partially throw Chubon off balance, but he wasn't completely knocked to the ground. Chubon quickly threw the handgun toward Uptain, who was still yelling at the bear in an attempt to distract it. However, the gun didn't quite make it to Uptain. It landed just short, leaving Chubon with no immediate way to fight back. Agitated by their frantic movements, the sow refocused on Uptain, intensifying the attack. Seeing an opportunity to escape, Chubon realized his only chance to survive was to run and get help. As he turned to flee, the last thing he saw of his guide, Mark Uptain, was the man standing firm, facing the bear, doing his best to hold his ground. That would be the last time anyone saw Uptain alive. With terror driving him, Chubon ran as fast as he could across the rough terrain, the sounds of the bear's pursuit echoing in his ears. After covering about 400 yards, he reached the horses. With haste, he untied the animals, managing to get one of them ready for flight. He spurred his horse into action, riding desperately toward the top of a ridge. It was his only hope of finding a signal for help. At approximately 16:30, Chubon's frantic 911 call reached Teton County Sheriff's Office dispatch, and the search for Uptain would soon begin. It took rescuers 2 hours to reach Corey Chubon via helicopter, and with each passing minute, the chances of Mark Uptain's survival grew slimmer. The team worked quickly, but as darkness descended, they were forced to stop their search, leaving Uptain behind. They planned to return the next day, but time was not on their side. On September 15, 2018, rescuers located Mark Uptain's lifeless body, approximately 50 yards uphill from where the attack took place. His injuries were consistent with an aggressive bear attack. His skull showed signs of severe trauma from bear bites. Nearby, a can of bear spray with its safety removed was found about 5 yards from his body. The evidence suggested both the sow and her cub were involved in the attack. Despite his efforts to escape, dragging himself uphill, he eventually collapsed, dropping the bear spray before rolling to the base of a tree where he succumbed to his wounds. Authorities analyzed the attack and decided to take action against the bears. Given the lack of the elk carcass at the site, it was determined that the bears had not been guarding their food. Additionally, the bears approached the men rather than the other way around, suggesting the attack was unprovoked. The bears were likely drawn to the elk carcass and attacked in an attempt to feed. Wyoming Game and Fish staff set non-lethal traps at the site. The yearling was caught and euthanized, while the sow was shot after charging law enforcement officers on the scene. Mark Uptain is survived by his wife and 5 children, ages 10 to 17. A 5-foot-tall woman faces off against a 10-foot bear, the largest one ever documented. With only an old, worn-out rifle in her hands, she understands that her shot must be flawless. If she misses, the consequences could be deadly. As she raises her rifle, the bear catches her scent, turning to face her. Bella Twin, standing at a modest 5 feet, was a woman of remarkable strength. A member of the Cree Nation, she was deeply familiar with surviving in the wild. As an expert hunter and trapper, she had honed her skills from an early age, just like many others in her community. Her legendary encounter in 1953 took place in the remote wilderness near Alberta, Canada. At 63 years old, Bella had a lifetime of hunting experience. She knew every animal she tracked and trapped inside and out. Her father had taught her the precise technique to kill a bear with a single shot, how and where to aim. She'd learned this vital skill when she was just 13, and it would prove essential when she encountered the largest grizzly bear ever recorded 50 years later. On May 10, 1953, Bella and her companion, Dave Auger, were walking through the countryside near Alberta. They were making their way along an oil exploration cut line south of Slave Lake, hunting small game. Both of them were carrying firearms, but Bella's rifle was a sight to behold. It appeared old and unreliable, a .22 caliber single-shot Cooey Ace 1 rifle. The rifle was in rough shape. Its receiver was corroded, and the barrel was covered in rust, held together with hockey tape. The wood was worn, dull, and cracked, with screws missing. Anyone who picked it up would likely assume it no longer worked. It looked like an antique, but Bella was intimately familiar with her rifle. Despite its worn appearance, she trusted it completely. For decades, it had provided sustenance for her and her family. She never ventured into the wild without it. But now, she faced a new challenge. Would it be enough to protect her from a grizzly bear? She was about to find out. The sky above was overcast and gray, and a strong breeze rustled the leaves and branches. As Bella and Dave walked through the woods, Bella suddenly heard a sound. A twig snapping, followed by rustling in the underbrush. Turning quickly, she spotted a grizzly bear just yards away. The bear hadn't heard them nor smelled them due to the wind, and they had been lucky. Bella hissed to Dave, signaling for him to hide, but the bear lifted its snout, sniffing the air. It had detected them. The bear paused its foraging and began searching the area. Slowly, it followed the same path they had been walking, its head gently swaying from side to side, and its massive paws leaving deep impressions in the soft ground. Bella, hiding with Dave behind some bushes, peered through the foliage. The bear was massive, the biggest she had ever seen. There was a chance it might turn around, look away, and leave. But Bella wasn't willing to take that risk. She knew if it noticed them now, she would have mere seconds to react. She realized that they stood no chance against such a giant. So, without hesitation, she raised her rifle. Reports suggest she had it loaded with a .22 long cartridge. She took a deep breath, just as her father had taught her when she was a child. She remembered his advice. The best place to aim when killing a bear was halfway between the ear and eye if the animal was standing sideways. If it was facing directly, the target should be up the nose or the roof of the open mouth. Any deviation from these points, and the shot could fail to kill the bear, possibly injuring it. An injured bear, Bella knew, could be far more dangerous. She understood the importance of her shot. Just then, the bear saw them. Startled, it stood upright on its hind legs, displaying its enormous size and power. Some accounts suggest the bear lunged at Dave, and Bella's timely shot saved him. Other reports say she shot the bear before it advanced. Regardless, she fired. In an instant, the bear collapsed to the ground, lifeless, just a few feet from them. One shot had taken down the mighty creature. Bella reloaded her rifle, stepped out from behind the bushes, and aimed at the bear once more. She fired into its skull. There was no reaction. It remained still. Bella reloaded and fired again, and again, 7 times in total, ensuring that the massive beast was truly dead, not just stunned. Bella knew well the dangers of leaving an injured animal behind. Bella's remarkable shot quickly became a sensation, spreading far and wide. She gained attention and was hailed as a local hero, admired for her bravery and skill. Before long, people were eager to see the enormous bear that had fallen to her. Some grizzly hunters, those who devoted their lives to tracking and hunting the biggest bears, spending extensive time in the wild, were understandably frustrated to hear about the small woman's successful shot. However, Bella didn't boast about her accomplishment. For her, it was not about pride, but necessity. Despite the bear's immense size and impressive presence, Bella remained practical. Rather than keeping the bear's skin and skull as trophies, she sold them. She sold the bear's hide and rifle to a museum, while a collector purchased the skull. The money she earned from these sales would provide for her family and go much further than keeping the bear's remains. Before parting with the skin, Bella posed for a photo in front of it. In the picture, she is seated side-on to the camera, the massive bear skin towering behind her. She subtly hides her gun, likely ashamed of its worn-out, taped-up appearance. Bear size is often measured by the skull, and Bella's bear had an impressive one. Its skull measured 16.5 inches long and nearly 10 inches wide, earning a total score of 26.5 inches. This made the bear the largest one ever recorded at the time. Bella held this record for just 1 year before a commercial fisherman in British Columbia killed an even larger grizzly in 1954. Although the exact weight of the bear Bella hunted is unknown, some estimates suggest it weighed around 1,000 pounds and stood 10 feet tall when on its hind legs. How Bella and Dave managed to transport the giant bear back to their village remains a mystery. It's unfortunate that such a magnificent creature met its end at the hands of a human, but when confronted by one of the most feared predators on land, it's often better to prioritize safety. Bella's remarkable story lives on through her grandson, Larry Loy, who immortalized her in the book As Long as the Rivers Flow. Over time, he felt that her incredible tale was being forgotten, and he made it his mission to preserve her legacy. Larry wanted the world to remember her astounding feat. Bella was an extraordinary woman and an expert survivalist, and her skills have been passed down through generations of her family. What do you think about this story? Share your thoughts and comments in the reactions, and be safe. In April 2024, Tyce Erickson was on the hunt of his life. He was experienced in hunting elk, particularly bow hunting, but he had never taken on a grizzly bear. That kind of hunt took months to plan and save for. But when Tyce's friend Ryan was offered a rare hunting opportunity on Kodiak Island due to a cancellation, Tyce was his first choice for his hunting buddy. Typically, people can wait 2 years from booking such a hunt before they are permitted. But Tyce and Ryan only had to wait 3 weeks. Tyce knew he couldn't pass up the opportunity, and they headed off, joining a guide on the island for the adventure of their lives. Tyce carried with him his bow. He had always dreamed of taking down a bear with a bow, and now was his chance. But he also carried a sidearm. This was a 10mm Smith & Wesson M&P 2.0 with a 4-inch barrel. It was small, but it packed a punch. Kodiak Island was beautiful and everything Tyce hoped it would be. Surrounded by towering cottonwoods, the call of an eagle pierced the skies overhead, interrupting the sound of the rushing water from the river. The guide took the pair up a north-facing slope. There was evidence of bears in the area, and only the week before a male bear had been hunted nearby. This meant that other males were likely to have moved into the same area. This was good news for the hunters, and they cautiously approached the location of the last hunt. If there were any remains of the carcass, then they needed to be careful. A male bear protecting his cache was a dangerous encounter. When they arrived at the site, however, any remnants of the dead bear had gone, and the team decided to set up camp for the night. Tyce had been warned that hunting bears was a game of patience. It took days or weeks to make the perfect kill, but that was all part of the experience. Almost every day they saw bears from their viewing spots. They sat, perched on the hillside, looking over the south side of the canyon. Below them was the perfect spot to see bears. It had been nicknamed the Killing Fields, as so many bears had been shot on the open meadows far below them. Coming out into the open grassland to feed on berries and patrol the area was a daily activity for the bears, and so Tyce and the others knew they would be in luck if they waited patiently for the right shot and the right bear. The tag for a bear was expensive, and Tyce knew that he wouldn't be making a hunt like this often. This was an almost once-in-a-lifetime opportunity, and he wanted to make the most of it. They saw lots of bears, but none of them was big enough or had a decent enough pelt to warrant a kill. There were better specimens out there, and Tyce and Ryan were willing to wait for them. Hunting between mid-April and mid-May on Kodiak can be unpredictable. The snowy conditions can be challenging, and securing a successful kill wasn't guaranteed. But on the 7th day, their luck changed. Moving from their vantage point, the guide spotted a bear in a bed. It had hunkered down in the long undergrowth. The guide signaled for Tyce to use the fawn distress call. Tyce and Ryan were lying on a ridge. They couldn't see the bear that their guide was referring to, but as soon as they made the fawn call, the bear got up and started running towards them. Only when the bear was thundering across the ground could Tyce see it properly, and he was shocked at just how enormous the animal was. It was stocky and sturdy. Its coat was glistening and the muscles on its body were solid. Tyce and Ryan stayed perfectly still, waiting for the bear to come closer. But as soon as the bear reached the brow of the hill, it stopped in its tracks. It knew that the deer wasn't there and instead picked up the men's scent. It walked closer, walking towards its fate. Ryan raised his rifle, staring down its sights at the male bear. With one squeeze of his finger, the crack of the rifle rang out and the bear spun around. Ryan had struck the bear directly between its shoulders, and the bear tried biting at the wound, agony and fear gripping it. But as it spun and twisted and turned, it opened its chest up to Ryan, who squeezed the trigger once more. He hit the bear in the chest. A loud smack rang out when the bullet made contact and the bear fell to the ground, rolled down the hillside. That was the first bear kill of the trip, and now the pressure was on Tyce to make an equally impressive kill. He didn't want to leave empty-handed, not when he had just watched his friend make the perfect shot. It was a week later when the team found their next target. On the other side of the valley, a large male Kodiak appeared from some undergrowth to tuck into a carcass. He was an impressive animal, and straight away, Tyce knew that this was his. The guide took them closer. They had to stay downwind of the bear, working their way down one side of the valley and then up the other so that they were within range. Climbing up the other hillside, they came to a crest and peered over the edge. There, below them, was the bear. Tyce crawled forwards, stalking the animal whilst the others watched on. When he was 38 yards away, he pulled his bow up in front of him. He pulled back on the bow, holding his breath as he stared at the magnificent animal. But the bear looked up at the last second. Something had spooked it. Something had caught its eye, and in a flash, it took off. Tyce cursed himself for not having taken the shot earlier. That could have been his only shot at securing a kill this hunting trip, and time was running out. Maybe using a bow wasn't the best idea. He looked at Ryan, and Ryan handed him his rifle. Now the hunt was on. Tyce followed in the direction of the bear. He made the distressed fawn call, and immediately the bear ran towards the location. Tyce stood stock still. The bear was just 200 yards from his position. He crept forwards. This was his opportunity, his moment. He wanted to make sure he had a good shot, and so inched closer. When we was within 20 feet of the bear, he knelt down just behind a ridge and raised the rifle to his cheek. Steadying his breathing, but with his heart thumping in his chest, he squeezed the trigger. The loud crack reverberated around the canyon walls. But he had missed the bear. The bullet flew over the bear's head, and Tyce cursed himself once more. He never took his eyes off the animal, though, and went for another. But just then, the gun cover waved in front of the sight, obscuring his view. Tyce couldn't see anything. When it fluttered back out of the way, Tyce could just see the bear disappearing amongst the alder trees. He zoomed in with his scope and made another shot, and the bear was gone. It was impossible to tell if he had struck the bear or not. There was a slight movement of the alder trees, and Tyce hoped that was the bear, stumbling and reeling around. But there was only one way to find out for sure. He and the others had to track the bear and see what the damage was. Tyce was disappointed that he had made a poor shot. In hindsight, he shouldn't have taken it if he was certain it would be a direct hit. An injured bear was a dangerous one, and he may have just put his friends' lives in danger. He handed the rifle back to Ryan and pulled out his handgun. The two of them and the guide began walking towards where the bear should have fallen. They approached with caution, pausing for any sounds of a distressed bear. They heard nothing. Peering over a small rise, they saw the spot where the bear had been, but it wasn't there. As it turned out, the shot Tyce had made struck the bear in the knee of one of its back legs. It was wounded, but it wasn't slowing down. Drops of blood fell onto the ground, leaving a trail. Dead leaves also provided another giveaway as the indentations from the bear footprints were leading through the forest. The search radius grew bigger. 20 yards turned into 40 yards, and as they continued to follow spatters of blood on the alder leaves, they found themselves 2 miles further along. Ryan and the guide were beginning to think they should stop and head back to their camp. The light was fading and the trek was taking its toll, but Tyce was determined to find the bear and finish it off. The bear followed the river, but the bear knew exactly where Tyce and the others were. It always kept them upwind, always picking up their scent and listening to their voices. Then the bear's trail diverted away from the river and turned uphill. Often injured bears will move uphill, then stop and look back down to determine who or what is coming. They move uphill when they plan to make an ambush. Tyce and his friends were now being hunted. Cautiously looking above them, the team pressed on. With the sun setting, they had less than an hour of daylight left. Then they would be confined by total darkness. They left their packs and headlamps back at the beginning of the trek, not thinking the trail would be that long. Time was running out. With the sound of rushing water in his ears, Tyce suddenly heard a terrifying sound. A low grunting noise suddenly came out of nowhere. It was the bear. They had finally caught up to it, and, as predicted, it had been waiting for them. All of a sudden, it erupted out of the alder. The guide, who was now only 10 yards in front of Tyce, immediately pulled the trigger of his rifle and then fell backwards. With the bear towering above him, he shot again with his rifle. Then he shouted for help. Tyce clawed through the brush, trying to get to the guide's side as quickly as possible to help. With the rifle shots, the bear had now been hit for a second or third time. Tyce pulled up his handgun and squeezed the trigger repeatedly. He unloaded his entire barrel into the bear. But by the third shot, the bear crumpled and fell to the ground. It had been a terrifying, adrenaline-fueled experience, and he walked carefully over to the bear. He prodded it. The bear lifted its head and let out a loud growl, a final cry before it was silenced forever.